The opening hours of the air campaign over Iraq were defined by a single, uncompromising priority: air superiority.
Red leader to squadron, maintain course and altitude.
Before
We're 5 minutes
diplomacy
out.
could find leverage, the sky itself had to be controlled. On the
Morning
morning
patrol,
of January
status
19,
check. We are holding course
1991, that responsibility fell on a small number of
Copy,
pilots flying long,
090.
intense
Keep
patrols
sharp,
at the edge of
over.
enemy territory. Captain Cesar Rico Rodriguez and his wingmen were not hunting for glory. Their mission was escort. Ahead of a large strike package, they were tasked with clearing the airspace so that 36 aircraft could strike targets near Baghdad and return alive. It was the kind of assignment that rarely made headlines, yet quietly determined the success or failure of an entire operation. Below them, waves of F-16 seconds rolled in toward their targets. Each aircraft carried 2,000-pound general-purpose bombs, released with brutal precision onto Iraqi ammunition depots. The desert erupted in fire. Shockwaves rippled outward as towering plumes of smoke rose into the morning sky. As trained, the F-16 pilots immediately pulled up hard, releasing chaff and flares, bracing for surface-to-air missiles that everyone assumed would follow. But the missiles did not come. Instead, the threat emerged from the air itself. The Iraqi Air Force, battered and outnumbered, had been holding its most capable fighters in reserve. Now, sensing a narrow opening, it committed what remained of its elite, MiG-29 Fulcrums. These were not obsolete interceptors or desperate last stands. They were fourth-generation
approaching the
fighters,
target area.
fast,
Deploying
agile,
countermeasures now.
and lethal in the hands of skilled pilots who understood they had little left to lose. For the Iraqi pilots, patience had been their only advantage. They stayed at a distance, watching, waiting, letting the Americans commit fully to the strike. When word came that only 2 F-15 seconds were ahead of the formation, the calculation changed. 2 aircraft, separated from their broader support, suddenly looked like opportunity. Up in the Eagle's cockpits, the first indication of danger came not from the naked eye, but from calm voices over the radio. An AWACS controller called out bearings and distances, transforming invisible threats into precise geometry. Rico listened, processed, and made his choice. He turned toward the most dangerous contact, accepting the responsibility without hesitation. Moments later, the F-15's radar painted a contact ahead. Then another warning followed, more unsettling than the first. On the radar warning receiver, a simple symbol appeared. The unmistakable signature of a MiG-29 searching for him. The rules of the fight were now clear. This would not be a chaotic brawl, but a measured contest of sensors, timing, and discipline. 2 pairs of modern fighters were closing at supersonic speed, each pilot knowing that a single mistake, 1 missed call, 1 rush trigger pull, could end everything in seconds. The sky over Baghdad had become a chessboard, and the opening moves were already underway. At first glance, the engagement appeared straightforward. 2 F-15C Eagles, equipped with powerful radars and long-range missiles, facing 2 MiG-29 Fulcrums. On paper, the Americans held the advantage, but air combat has never been decided on paper. As the distance closed, Rico selected an AIM-7 Sparrow and prepared to engage. Then the Fulcrums did something unexpected. Instead of pressing forward or turning away, they dove sharply, dropping far below the Eagle's altitude. The maneuver was deliberate. By flying low against the background of the Earth, the Iraqi pilots attempted to disappear into radar clusters, using the ground itself as camouflage. For a moment, it almost worked. On Rico's scope, the fuzzy return of a single contact fractured into 2 distinct targets. The illusion was gone. He locked one in and steadied his hand. But the Iraqis were not finished. Without warning, the radar warnings went silent. The contacts vanished. Objects moving perpendicular to the F-15's radar beam slipped into a known blind spot. The MiG-29 seconds exploited it with precision, sliding in and out of detection like ghosts. Contact. Lost. Contact again. Always 12 nautical miles away. Close enough to threaten, far enough to frustrate. Rico understood the game immediately. The Fulcrums were not trying to kill him, not yet. They were dragging him. As the chase stretched on, the tactical picture grew darker. The Eagles were moving east, closer to Baghdad, closer to a dense belt of surface-to-air missile sites. Rico's radar warning receiver began to chirp with growing urgency as multiple emitters lit up ahead. 125 nuove batteries. An entire field of missiles waiting patiently for an intruder to make a mistake. The realization hit hard. The MiGs were vague. The missiles were the trap. Rico keyed his radio. If he turned away now, the MiG-29 seconds would have a clear path to the strike package. The F-16 seconds, heavy and committed to their bombing runs, would be exposed. There would be losses. Guaranteed. The decision came quickly, but it was anything but easy. They would stay. Rico ordered his wingman to hold position and continue. The third MiG-29 approached in silence. Unlike the others, it kept its radar switched off, slipping through the airspace outside the Eagle's forward-facing sensors. No warning tone, no flashing symbol on the radar warning receiver. Just empty sky where danger was quietly accelerating toward them.
Sir,
High
convoys
above the
under heavy attack at grid
battlefield,
reference
an
459.
AWACS controller named Mark White noticed the anomaly. Although the fight had technically moved beyond his assigned sector, experience pulled his eyes back to the screen. What he saw made his stomach tighten. A new contact was closing fast, well within missile range, and the F-15 seconds were not reacting. They flew straight on. At 18 nautical miles, the threat was undeniable. 16 miles. 15. Still no maneuver from the Eagles. White hesitated. Breaking protocol in the middle of an engagement could confuse pilots already operating at the edge of human limits. But doing nothing would be worse. At 13 miles, he made the call. Pop-up contact. 330 degrees for 13 miles. In Rico's cockpit, the warning snapped everything into motion. He jettisoned his external fuel tanks and hauled the Eagle into a violent turn. Vapor streaming over the wings as the aircraft strained against physics. The instant his nose pointed toward the threat, the invisible became real. Bogey. 8 miles. Now they were inside each other's reach. At the same moment, the Iraqi pilot flying blind into mountains told the Americans was directly ahead. He powered on his radar. On Rico's radar warning receiver, the dreaded symbol appeared. The rules of engagement tightened the situation even further. Any contact inside 10 miles had to be visually identified. Somewhere in the sky, friendly stealth aircraft could be operating. One mistake could lead to fratricide. Rico locked the target but held his fire. The Iraqi pilot did not hesitate. He locked onto Rico's Eagle. The warning tone in the cockpit turned into a scream. Rico rolled inverted and dove, dumping chaff as he plummeted from 30,000 feet at near supersonic speed, hoping terrain and clutter would break the lock. It didn't. Seconds stretched painfully. Rico searched the sky. Molly worked frantically through identification procedures, coordinating with intelligence assets. Finally, the clearance came through. Mole pressed the trigger. Fox 1, the AIM-7 Sparrow leapt from the rail, its motor igniting in a white plume. Rico watched the missile streak past, its smoke trail cutting through the sky like a line drawn in chalk. Ahead, the MiG-29 pitched downward, lining up for a shot that would never come. The Sparrow struck squarely. A flash, a violent breakup. The Fulcrum vanished into debris and flame. Splash 1. Rico pulled out of his dive at barely 500 feet above the desert. Relief washed over him, but it was thin and brief. High above, AWACS was already calling out another threat. The fight was not finished. From a distance, the engagement over Iraq could be reduced to a simple scorecard: aircraft lost, missiles fired, victories tallied. But from the American perspective, the true significance of that morning lay elsewhere. It was not just a demonstration of superior technology, but a lesson in restraint, coordination, and doctrine under pressure. The United States entered the air war with a clear philosophy. Air superiority would not be achieved through reckless aggression, but through integration. Fighters, strike aircraft, surveillance platforms, and command and control assets were bound together into a single system.
Cruising
at the
at
center of
40,000
that
feet,
system was
the
AWACS,
aircraft surveys
quietly
the chaos,
shaping the
an
battlefield far
unobtrusive
beyond
eye
the range
watching
of
the
any
unfolding
individual
conflict.
radar. Mark White's intervention illustrated this perfectly. His decision to break protocol was not driven by bravado, but by judgment. An understanding that rigid adherence to procedure could be just as dangerous as chaos. In modern air warfare, the flow of information often matters more than speed or firepower. Whoever sees first, understands first, and decides first usually survives. Equally important were the rules of engagement. To an outside observer, the requirement to visually identify targets inside 10 miles may seem like a liability, an unnecessary restriction in the middle of combat. In reality, it reflected a strategic maturity shaped by decades of experience. The sky over Iraq was crowded with friendly aircraft operating on the edge of visibility. One impulsive decision could have resulted in catastrophic fratricide, with consequences far beyond the tactical level. For Iraq, the encounter revealed a different reality. The MiG-29 was a formidable aircraft, capable and dangerous. But without an integrated command structure and reliable situational awareness, individual skill could only go so far. The Iraqi pilots fought with creativity and courage, exploiting radar limitations and terrain, but they were ultimately isolated, fighting fragments of a system against a unified whole. International observers took note. The engagement reinforced a growing consensus among military planners worldwide. Future conflicts would not be decided by single platforms or heroic duels, but by networks. Sensors, communication, discipline, and training had become decisive weapons. In the end, the outcome over Baghdad was not just a victory for American pilots. It was a validation of an approach to warfare that prioritized coordination over chaos and judgment over impulse. An approach that would define air combat for decades to come. The final confrontation unfolded not at long range, but face to face. After the first MiG-29 was destroyed, the sky offered no pause for reflection. Another Fulcrum loomed nearby, close enough to threaten a shot from behind. Turning away was an option, but not a safe one. With the strike package already withdrawing, survival now depended on decisiveness. This time, there would be no radar games. As the two aircraft closed, identification came only at the last possible moment. Less than 50 feet separated them when the truth became unmistakable. The green camouflage, the Iraqi markings, the unmistakable shape of a MiG-29. What followed was not a missile exchange, but a pure test of airmanship. A dogfight. At extreme G-forces, both pilots pushed their aircraft to the edge of human endurance. Altitude bled away rapidly as the fight spiraled toward the desert floor. In those seconds, technology mattered less than instinct. There were no second chances, no room for hesitation. One pilot found the limits. The others stayed just inside them. The Iraqi MiG-29 never recovered from its final dive. As the dust settled and the adrenaline faded, there was no celebration in the cockpit of the F-15, only relief. Only the quiet acknowledgement that the mission was over and that survival, his own and others, had been secured. Let's go home. With three confirmed victories over the course of his career, Captain Cesar Rico Rodriguez would be remembered not for bravado, but for discipline. His actions that morning reflected something deeper than tactical success. They reflected a mindset shaped by restraint, by respect for rules, and by an understanding of the true cost of error in modern war.
The Mustangs provided cover as the ground troops pushed
left a lasting imprint on air combat history. It demonstrated that even in an age of advanced fighters and beyond visual range missiles, war still hinges on human judgment, on when not to shoot, on when to hold the line for others, on knowing that victory is sometimes defined not by destruction, but by control. The battles of that war have long since faded from the headlines, but the lessons remain, written not in slogans, but in decisions made at Mach speed, thousands of feet above the ground.